I call Tracy Martin.
Mr. Chair, there are so many issues inside of education funding that it's very difficult to contain oneself to a single topic and or to be contained to only 5 minutes. I could, for example, point to what is an obvious ploy of the national government of announcing headline-grabbing budget lines in one budget, taking a month's worth of media coverage on that budget line, then quietly removing that same budget unspent in the following year, and then use the same bookwork transaction to give itself another headline. I could, for example, point to the national government's lauding of its investment into education. They are going into this election crowing about their increasing spending into education, the fact that much of this spending has nothing to do with a commitment to education, but is a requirement due to a large natural disaster to rebuild the educational facilities of Christchurch, appears to be lost on its backbenchers. Or the fact that much of this spending is required to rebuild schools throughout New Zealand. It was a national government that changed the building code, the building standards, and approved faulty materials, millions upon millions to fix past National Party mistakes. I could warn the New Zealand government about the current trumpeting by this government of their supposed increased investment in education from the budget under discussion to the more recent budgets. I could warn the New Zealand public that when the government says it is investing more than ever before in education, they don't mean this to future-proof the public education system. Rather, sir, they are fattening the goose for sale. They are implementing a marketable business model over our public schools so that should they successfully gain a third term as government, they will extend the partial privatisation via charter schools to all New Zealand schools as previously advanced by this party in the 1990s. But, sir, I will have to contend myself with a single piece of propaganda from this government directly from this budget. Because, sir, this single example shows how the National Party's policy of plug and play when it comes to ministers, which leads to a reliance on officials' high-level thinking, which in turn leads to unintended consequences, impacts negatively on the children of New Zealand. And I refer to the budget announcement of increases to the early childhood equity funding. Their budget announcement that read $47.9 million is to be invested over 4 years in equity funding to support learners in our target communities. What were the targets for this supposedly additional funding? They were to be A. Low socioeconomic communities, 2. Special needs and non-English speaking backgrounds, C. Language and culture other than English, and D. Isolation. The Ministry and the Minister made the following statement. We expect that services that receive equity funding will use the increased funding to increase the enrolment and participation of children from the priority groups by taking actions such as keeping ECE fees low so children from priority families can support and maintain regular participation, encouraging and supporting family, whānau, to actively engage and support what their children are learning, provide additional resourcing for the learning in Te Reo Māori and Pacifica languages. So, how has this worked out for New Zealand? Well, let's talk about the New Zealand Play Centre Federation, an organisation internationally recognised, an organisation that goes directly to low ECE costs with direct involvement of whānau and family, and that even more than that, provides opportunities for those family members, those parents, to gain education at no cost. Well, as we debate this budget, Play Centre is nationally in crisis. Unless the current funding context changes, then at least 483 play centres across New Zealand will continue to crumble and they will close. Play Centre's only hope is to hold on long enough for a change of government later this year. How about mobile kindergartens? How about the killing off of the Hunterville's mobile kindergarten through government funding cuts and increased compliance? Mobile kindergartens involve teachers travelling to a number of rural or isolated areas with a range of equipment and resources and running kindergarten sessions for young children and their families. They provide ECE services in areas in which few other ECE services are available. Who will fill this gap? They will close. They are about to close, running at $100,000 loss because the funding model no longer fits. Who will fill that gap for our rural children? Private business? Don't be ridiculous. There's not enough numbers to provide the commercial viability of a business to go into these areas, but that does not minimise the government's responsibility to rural communities for their children to be able to access these services inside marae, inside community halls.
I call Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koutou te whare nui.